Welcome, it's Charter Local Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance, and we are joined today by Craig Ford. He is the minority leader in the Alabama State House of Representatives. Sir, I thank you so much for joining us. I want to speak with you about the budget. As you know, Alabama's budget is in dire shape, at least the general fund side. And there does seem to be some bipartisan agreement, although not a unity in agreement, on the question of new revenues on gaming, on gambling.
Well, we're one of the few states in the country that has no form of gaming that's legalized.
Right.
The Porch Creek Indians are allowed to have their facilities on their tribal land, and they're wanting to pay taxes. And
Right.
basically, what they want to do is enter into what we call Class 3 gaming and pay their fair share of taxes. The general fund needs revenue, so why would we not enter into a compact and allow them to have table games and receive the monies and put it into the general fund?
And what's interesting, your counterpart, sort of, in the state Senate, Del Marsh, the majority leader, essentially, Senate Pro Tem, he's in favor of gaming. And so it does seem as if you got Democrats supporting, you got Republicans supporting, the governor not so much. But what the Pro Tem is looking to do is put an initiative, a constitutional amendment on the ballot, so Alabamians can support or oppose gaming, but at this stage, it's not going to happen.
You know, unfortunately, there's a supermajority in the House and the Senate of the Republican Party. The majority of the Republican Party is held by basically what we call the far right-wing Tea Party. So they will not allow the bill to come up to a vote. They believe it's a morality issue, which we oppose. And the best form of democracy is let the people have the right to vote.
Right.
So our opinion as Democrats is, what are we afraid of to allow the people to have the right to vote on an issue?
So I'm wondering, and I spoke to Senator Marsh about this, could there be a scenario whereby, even though the governor doesn't have to say, yes, put it on the ballot, it could go on the ballot without his approval, he's looking for new revenues outside of gaming. So could you speak with the governor and say, look, $541 million, that's not going to happen. But the House, even the Republicans, are willing to look at $151 million. Maybe we can look at that if you agree to allow gaming on the ballot. Do you think that's a place for compromise?
Absolutely. The physical note that Senator Marsh had done with AUM, the lottery would generate almost over $300 million. So there's half of what we're needing for the general fund, and it's a voluntary tax. It's a gaming piece of legislation, so if you don't want to pay it, don't play it.
But here's an interesting point, and I ask you specifically as the minority leader, the Democratic leader. Some would argue that gaming is a tax on the poor, because for better or for worse, a lot of the poor want to hit it rich, quick. How would you respond to those that would say this really is a tax, and it's a tax on people that can least afford it?
I don't disagree with that statement at all. I've said from the beginning, the majority of the people that play the lottery or gaming are the people that are poor. The problem is they're doing it anyway. So we have casinos in Alabama. Some people say we don't have gaming in Alabama. We have gaming in Alabama. We have dog tracks. We have 2 casinos. They smell like a casino, and they are a casino.
It quacks like a duck.
Yeah, it's a duck.
Right.
So, and they're also, not only are they playing the lottery, they're playing the lottery in other states.
Right.
So they're traveling now to
Georgia,
go play the lottery.
Mississippi, Tennessee,
We're
Florida.
surrounded by 3 states with a lottery, and Mississippi has casinos. So Hope Scholarship in Georgia is giving out $1.6 million in scholarships to Georgia's children. They allot $400,000 of those scholarships to Alabamians' taxpayers' money. So why are we funding Georgia's children to go to college? Let's keep our money here at Alabama. Let's fund our own children's education.
So do you anticipate that either this year or next, or whenever it may be in the near future, that we will see a constitutional amendment on the ballot for consideration that would allow some form of gaming?
I would hope so. I don't think it'll happen again until after 2018, until you get more of a balance in the legislature. With the supermajority of the Republicans in the House and Senate, it's just not the temperature right now.
Again, it's interesting, though, because this is an issue that some Republicans support. The Senate Pro Tem supports it. So is it that supermajority that's a problem?
It's the majority of their caucus doesn't support it. And the President of the Senate supports it. And then the Speaker of the House has a whole different gaming bill.
Right.
So there's a lot of moving parts going forth.
And the Speaker's bill is an interesting one. As I understand it, he's looking for the Band of Indians, which you mentioned, to help close the general fund gap this year.
Right.
Give us $250 million and we'll be fine this year, and then we'll give you exclusive rights. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm a believer in fair market and competition. I think competition will make everybody stronger. I don't believe anyone should have exclusivity. So therefore, there's other people that would be willing to bid out too on enter into some engagements on some gaming in Alabama. So, you know, to come out in the beginning with that piece of legislation, just say this is what we got, let's rush it through and pass it, I think that's irresponsible government.
Another issue that seems to cross partisan lines is the question of how Alabama budgets. Alabama is one of 3 states that has a general fund budget and an education budget. Education budget's doing quite well, in surplus by over $250 million. General fund budget is in deficit by about $250 million. So there have been discussions about unifying the budgets.
Right.
And I've spoken with Democrats who say yes, and Democrats say no. I've spoken with Republicans who say yes, Republicans say no. What does the minority leader say?
The minority leader and the majority of Democrats oppose unifying the budgets. We are for public education. We believe it's every person's constitutional right to receive a public education. And once you combine the budgets, you're going to start bleeding money out of the education trust fund. It's going to go to the general fund.
By definition, though, I mean, is that necessarily what has to happen if you combine the budgets?
It would happen. I've been down here 15 years. I can tell you that's what would happen. Medicaid is a continuing, growing problem that we're going to continue to have to address.
But let's talk about Medicaid. If Alabama accepted the Medicaid expansion, it would seem to me, I'm not an expert, but I think I passed math, you know, that could help close the general fund deficit.
We are 100% for Medicaid expansion. Whether you like the Affordable Health Care Plan Act or some call it Obamacare, to us is irrelevant. That's a federal issue. It's in place, it's there. Why would we not want to take that money and go ahead and enter into the compact and provide over 300,000 more Alabamians health care insurance? The hospital industry's for it. Our physicians, majority of them are for it. We already have infrastructure in place.
Right.
So the industry's there waiting on it.
Now, Governor Bentley hasn't come out in favor of the expansion, but one could read into a lot of what he said, which I have tried to do, and I'm not going to put words in his mouth. It seems as if he would be interested in the expansion. Am I reading that correctly?
He is interested in it. Unfortunately, in their party, it's been a political football. And basically just because they term it as Obamacare.
Right.
So they have used the terms, don't let federal government overreach state government. Well, it happens in everything that we do. The roads are paved 80% by federal government. Farmers receive federal subsidies. So, you know, Alabama's a taker state. For every dollar we send to D.C., we get 3 back. So, you know, this is an initiative. I'm not saying it's a perfect initiative. There needs to be some changes in it. But let's don't leave the money laying on the table.
So some other, let's call them red states, which Alabama is, they have accepted the expansion, but with some creativity.
Right.
They've looked at having the Medicaid dollars flow privately and not through public entities. Some Republican governors have signed on to that. Is that an option that Alabama should pursue?
Oh, absolutely. And our governor should do it. He should know best himself. He's a doctor. So, you know, I hope in the near future that will take place because we're losing lives in Alabama by not being insured. So,
what about the concern of some that in the first couple of years, now the federal government will pay 100% of the expansion, whereas in a couple of years it goes to 90% and then to 80%. It's still a nice chunk of money, but that does become a state responsibility.
It continues to decline. You know, if you look at all the numbers, we hired 2 independent studies. The governor hired one of them. The economic impact on the studies, it would start paying for itself. When we bring in a Mercedes or a Honda or a Hyundai to Alabama, we have to develop roadways, engineers, transportation issues are a viable factor, and then you have to offer tax abatements to them to come in and build these plants. Well, the Medicaid expansion, the plants are already there, which are the hospitals. The highways are already there, which are the direction to the hospitals. So this makes no sense. They're using it for political position, what we call political posturing at people's expense. So.
His name is Craig Ford. He's the minority leader in the Alabama State House of Representatives. I'm Brad Pomerance, Charter Local Edition.